So about 30 years ago, some scientists came together and they built something that we called the Biosphere 2. It was a biodome. It was the largest one that was built in the world. And what they were attempting to do was to create, an environment within that dome apart from our regular world. I don't know why they were doing this, but they had various levels of success and failure in doing this. They were able to create rain inside that biodome. They created a rainforest. They created in the environment of the beach and the ocean. But they also had some failures. And one of the failures that they had was that the trees that they planted inside the biodome, they would grow to a certain point and then just snap at the trunk and fall down. And nobody could figure out what was going on. Why would these trees grow to a certain place and then snap and break at the trunk? And the reason was because inside the biodome, there was one condition they could not recreate. They could not create wind. So the trees would grow to a certain place and break because there was no wind blowing to strengthen them. And they would just break off at the trunk. And so wind, although we think of the wind like we would have liked some wind this past week, wouldn't we? A little bit. A lot of times when we think of wind can be destructive, but at the same time, wind strengthens us, or trees in particular. And faith kind of works the same way. Faith in a perfect environment cannot be strengthened. It can't be strengthened. Okay? So imagine if our faith was like a tree inside a biodome and there was no wind. Conditions were perfect for everything else, but there's no wind. Our faith could not grow because there's no strength in it. We need, believe it or not, problems. We need problems for our faith to grow. I know we would like to think that we would be just fine without problems. That we could love the Lord immensely without problems. That our faith and trust in Him, our obedience to Him, if we just didn't have problems, we could be much better people. But the truth of the matter is we need our problems to grow in our faith. And you're going to see that as we look at this passage this morning out of Mark chapter 4. And it's really interesting that I titled this, The Terrifying Peace of Jesus. And the peace of Jesus, man, we love it when it comes, but it can be quite terrifying. And you're going to see that in this passage as we look at it together. And the first, he has power over storms. Look at what Mark chapter 4 says. It says, that day when evening came. So we got to go back to that day. All right, now if you weren't here last week and you haven't had a chance to watch or listen to last week's message, that day is referring to what we looked at last week. Jesus spent a day teaching about faith. He gave parables on faith. He did the parable of the sower. He did the parable of the lamp, the parable of the mustard seed. All of those were about faith and the importance of faith. And the disciples had sat there and listened to all of those stories about faith. And Jesus had explained to them the parables, what they meant. And so it's that day, okay? On that day, look at what happens next. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let us go over to the other side. Talking about they were at a lake. He said, let's go across the lake to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There was also other boats with him. A furious squall came up. If you don't know what a squall is, it's a storm. It's a storm on the water, kind of like what happens on Lake Erie sometimes. When some people are out there and it's real calm and they're fishing, then all of a sudden it's not, and there's huge waves, right? That's what happened to them. a furious squall came up and waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Now listen, they've just had a wonderful day of hearing God's word. I mean, Jesus has taught them about faith. He's explained to them what faith is, where it comes from, how it grows, how it works in their life. And on that day, they find themselves in a storm. Hearing God's word and having our faith encouraged by God's word, it only plays itself out if our faith is tested. And that's what happened here to the disciples. Listen, going through God's word it's intended to increase our faith, but faith, for it to stand strong, the wind has to blow. The wind has to blow. That's how we know if we really have faith. The Bible goes on to say that Jesus was in the stern of the boat asleep on a cushion. Now, I find that kind of funny because no one goes to sleep on a cushion by mistake. No, you go get a cushion and you lay down and you go to sleep. Jesus he intentionally wanted to lay down in the boat to go to sleep. And then this storm comes up. And apparently Jesus is a heavy sleeper because he didn't wake up. It says that waves were breaking over the boat. I don't know if he's down in the boat. I don't know how this works. But I'm guessing he was kind of getting wet and sleeping. He was tired. He's asleep in the boat with them. I can imagine in my mind the disciples with me for just a moment. If you can think about this for just a moment. Some of the disciples that were in the boat were not sailors. Okay, Matthew was a tax collector. All right, that tells us, and there were others in the boat. They were not, now there were some in the boat that were fishermen. They were used to being out. They'd probably seen squalls like this before. But there were some in the boat that I bet when the waves started kicking up, they got terrified quickly. And this is what I imagine. I imagine the novice sailors in the boat were like, let's wake Jesus up. And the more experienced sailors were like, we got it. We've seen this before. We know what's going on. We got it under control. And I can imagine that there was a bit of this tug and push between the disciples going on. Some of them saying, let's just wake Jesus up. And others saying, no, let him sleep. He obviously wants to sleep. And they go back and forth until it gets to the place that they feel that they're in danger. And everyone feels that they're in danger. And it's at that moment that the disciples wake him up. And folks, before we read the next passage, it leads to this observation. And that is, faith happens when we find the sweet spot between our immaturity and our pride. What's missing in the boat is faith. Now, there's immaturity in there. The immaturity is in the boat. People who they're afraid because these waves have come up. And so they're like, quick, let's wake up Jesus. Let's get Jesus involved. But there's also pride in the boat. Those group of guys that are like, oh, wait a minute, we know what to do. Let's not overreact. Let's not panic. We got this under control. We don't need Jesus. We know what to do. Faith is somewhere between those two extremes. Many times in life, when storms come up in our life, there are some that the slightest discomfort, the slightest miscalculation, the slightest problem, Jesus, help me. There are others who have these same problems and are like, I don't need Jesus. I know what to do. I know how to handle this. I don't need him yet. And so what happens is that faith is in neither one. Faith is not in our immaturity, And faith is not in our pride. Faith happens when we're somewhere between those two extremes. Does that make sense? That's what's happening inside this boat. Look at what the Bible goes on to say. The disciples, they woke him up. They only woke him up when they all agreed together we're going to die. That's what brought them together. And they woke him up. And they said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" So now they're in unison in what they're saying. The immature and the proud are now thoroughly convinced Jesus doesn't care about them. He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. And he said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Why would he say that? Because he'd just spent the whole day teaching them about faith. He'd just spent the whole day explaining faith to them. They had heard about faith. They understood faith, where it came from, how it works, how it grows. Yet, they had no faith. And then they said to each other, look at what the Bible says. They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." That word terrified, it means to be seized with alarm. In other words, in that moment, Jesus in the boat didn't make them feel that good. Instead, they're like, "Who is this with us? That even the wind and the waves listen to him." Yes, Jesus brought calm to their storm, but they were terrified by his display of power. They were terrified by it. And we're going to come back and talk about that in a moment. I want you to remember that idea of them being terrified by the peace that Jesus brought. But there's three reasons, real quick, that I want us to think about. Three reasons why we should have faith over fear that we find in this account that's happening here. First of all, the Word of God is not canceled by storms in our life. So Jesus had told the disciples when he got into the boat, what did he say? Let's go to the other side. Jesus made it clear we're going to the other side. Yet in the storm, they forgot. They forgot that Jesus said, we're going to the other side. They forgot that Jesus had already told them, you're going to make it to the other side. The storm caused them to forget the words that Jesus had given them. And that happens to me and you all the time, does it not? We can hear a song, or we can read a verse, go to a Bible devotion, or watch a powerful video of someone who has faith. And man, our faith is just bolstered. It is encouraged by the faith of others, by the Word of God. And then a storm comes into our life and we totally forget everything that we heard about it. We can't remember the promises. We can't remember what God did for somebody else. We can't remember what he's told us. We're completely overcome, as if God's word is canceled by the storm we find ourselves in. The storms that we find ourselves in, listen, we don't ever get to choose our storms, do we? Wouldn't that be nice if we got to choose our storms? But we don't get to choose our storms. And the thing is that the words that come from God, they're good for every storm. It doesn't matter what storm comes. And listen, I know we find ourselves in some unbelievable storms sometimes, but God's word is still true. The storms never cancel out the word of God. And you and I must hang on to the word of God in our storms. There's another reason why we should have faith over fear, and that is obedience never guarantees easy or normal circumstances. You and I, as followers of Jesus, we must remember that when we're doing exactly what the Lord tells us to do, when we're living the way to the best of our ability, we're living as the Bible tells us to live, that does not exempt us from storms. We can be doing exactly what God has asked us to do, and a furious storm come into our life. Do you know what I'm talking about? Sometimes what happens to us is that we're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm doing what God asked me to do, and this storm comes up. Am I really following God? Did I really hear his voice? I don't know that I can do this. And listen, can I tell you, it doesn't take much. For some people, it doesn't take much. I've had people come and sit in my office and say, I know the Lord has called me to teach this first and second grade class. I'm so excited to go teach these kids. I just can't wait to get there. And then they get there, do it for a month, and then they come out and say, I'm done. I'm done. I mean, I thought these were going to be exceptional first and second graders, not normal first and second graders. I thought first and second graders that came to church were always listening and always well behaved and just always respectful and just always responded to what I said immediately and would be awed by my stories and my persona. But the storm came. Little Johnny showed up. We chuckle, but that really happens. That really happens. That's all it takes. I was obeying the Lord and I ran into a problem. I don't think I need to be here anymore. Of course, you didn't see any of them jumping out of the boat. But I bet every one of them wished they weren't in that boat. And all they were doing is exactly what Jesus told them to do. And they found themselves in a storm. And that happens to you and I. There's a third reason why we should have faith over fear, and that is that God's presence should be enough. Listen, no matter how bad the storm was, Jesus was in the boat. And his presence should be enough. And listen, this is how you and I can really know if our faith is growing. And that is that we find ourselves in a storm and we're not panicking because we know God is with us. Do you know what I'm talking about? Some of you in here have done that. You've found yourself in a storm, but you're not being immature about it. And you're not being proud about it. You just know God's with you. It's going to be okay. You and I, our faith, we know it's maturing when God's presence is enough. It's enough. That's how you and I can know. That's what Jesus was saying. Why do you not have faith? I'm here. I never left you. The day wasn't over for the disciples because after the storm calmed, they landed on the other side just like Jesus had said. And they find themselves in a different kind of storm. Notice what the Bible says. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. And this man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. It's a different kind of storm, but one we are all very familiar with even in our own society. We have a lot of people in our own society, we don't know what to do with them. Just like this community didn't know what to do with this guy. His family could not help him. His community could not help him. And apparently the authorities could not subdue him. Imagine with me for just a moment the pleading of family and friends with him. Don't you know there were moments they pleaded with him and it didn't work? Imagine the intervention of social services and the medical profession stepping in, trying to help this man the best that they could. Nothing worked. Imagine the authorities getting involved, the government getting involved, stepping in, trying to subdue this man, trying to control this man. Nothing worked. Folks, you don't have to look very far into our newsreels to find situations like this happening all across our nation. In fact, it's very possible that people sitting right here in this room or watching online has someone in their family just like this. No one can get them to behave reasonably or responsibly. I think of the opioid crisis that's hitting our country. It's in our neck of the woods too. I think of people who have mental anguish and things going on in their life. And they don't behave like the rest of us behave. And society doesn't know what to do with them. So the best that this community could do was leave him alone. And just let him destroy himself. But look at what the Bible says. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." Now let me pause right here in the story and what's going on. Can you imagine what the disciples must have been thinking when they were watching this unfold? I mean, can you imagine some guy out of the tombs, out of the cemetery, comes running at them, yelling at them. We don't know how this man became demon-possessed, nor do we completely understand demon possession and how it works. Let me say this, nowhere in the Bible does it say that demon possession is continuous. In other words, this man had sane moments. He would slip in and out of reasonableness. So he had these sane moments that was going on in his life. And so demon-possessed people have these moments of sanity. But demon possession, obviously it leads to, looking at this man and his story, it leads to mental, emotional, and physical harm. And the severity of that harm can vary from person to person. And obviously in this person, it's bad. It's hopeless. No one can help him. It's interesting that from this little interaction with this demon-possessed man, we kind of get an idea of what demons believe. Demons, first of all, they believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I find that interesting. He ran up saying, "Jesus, Son of the Most High God." He knew exactly who he was talking to. So demons, they know Jesus. They know who he is. Demons know that Jesus has the ultimate authority. Ultimately, they cried out to him and said, "Look, don't torture us. What are they talking about? Don't banish us. Don't send us. Probably what they're referring to is the abyss. Don't send us to the abyss, a place of torment that's held for those who reject Christ and for Satan and his demons and all his angels and all that. They're like, don't send us there. They obviously recognize he has the authority to do that. Already, demons believe more than many people do. They believe in prayer, apparently, because they begged Jesus not to do something to them. So they're pleading with him to have some form of mercy on them. One positive thing is they didn't know Jesus' thoughts. They didn't know what Jesus was going to do with them, which lets us know that demonic forces in the world, they don't know how we think. Satan can't read our mind. He doesn't know what's going on between our ears. All of this just from this little encounter that's taking place here. So here's what we do know for sure. This man has lost his home. He's lost fellowship with family and friends. He's lost his mental stability. He's lost his dignity. He's lost his decency. He's lost his peace. And he's lost his purpose in life. And Jesus came to him. From a Jewish religious perspective, no God-fearing Jew would ever approach this man. One, he was a Gentile. Two, he lived in an unclean place. He lived in a cemetery. He lived among the dead. Three, the people around him, the industry of that region was pigs. It was swine. And Jews wouldn't be anywhere near that. But Jesus came to this man. It leads us to this observation. Jesus pursues people who are mentally anguished. Jesus pursues people who are mentally anguished. I came across this story. It was written by Tony Campello. I want to share it with you. I don't like to read things very often, but I do want to read this to you. It says, Miss Thompson taught Teddy Stollard in the 4th grade. He was a slow, unkempt student, a loner shunned by his classmates. The previous year, his mother died, and what little motivation for school he may have once had was now gone. Miss Thompson didn't particularly care for Teddy either, but at Christmas time, he brought her a small present. Her desk was covered with well-wrapped presents from the other children, but Teddy's came in a brown sack. When she opened it, there was a gaudy rhinestone bracelet with half the stones missing and a bottle of cheap perfume. The children began to snicker, but Miss Thompson saw the importance of the moment. She quickly splashed on some perfume and put on the bracelet, pretending Teddy had given her something special. At the end of the day, Teddy worked up enough courage to softly say, Miss Thompson, you smell just like my mother. And her bracelet looks really pretty on you too. I'm glad you like my presents. After Teddy left, Miss Thompson got down on her knees and prayed for God's forgiveness. She prayed for God to use her as she sought to not only teach these children, but to love them as well. She became a new teacher. She lovingly helped students like Teddy, and by the end of the year, he had caught up with most of his students. Miss Thompson didn't hear from Teddy for a long time. Then she received this note. Dear Miss Thompson, I wanted you to be the first to know I'll be graduating second in my class. Love, Teddy Stollard. 4 years later, she got another note. Dear Miss Thompson, they just told me I will be graduating first in my class. I wanted you to be the first to know. The university has not been easy, but I liked it. Love, Teddy Stallard. 4 years later, dear Miss Thompson, as of today, I'm Theodore Stallard, MD. How about that? I wanted you to be the first to know. I'm getting married next month. I want you to come and sit where my mother would sit if she were alive. You are the only family I have now. Dad died last year. Love, Teddy Stallard. Miss Thompson went to the wedding and sat where Teddy's mother would have sat because she let God use her as an instrument of encouragement. Folks, let me tell you something. There is a mental health crisis in our country. It's in our community. I'm telling you, Jesus would seek these people out. Not look to the government and say, you guys figure it out. That's somebody else's problem. That's somebody else's responsibility. That's somebody else's hard knocks in life that's broken them. As God's people, and listen, I don't have the answers, okay? I'm not standing here telling you I know exactly how to do this or how it should be done. I'm just saying Jesus didn't avoid those who are mentally anguished. And again, it doesn't take much. Miss Thompson could have avoided Teddy. He was in a state of mental anguish. We need to think about these things and what it truly means to follow Jesus in today's world. Look at what Romans, just listen to this. It's not going to pop up on the screen. Just listen to what God's word says. Romans 8, verse 38. It says, for I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. If God is willing to love us this way, listen, just being a Christian doesn't exempt us from mental anguish. It doesn't free us from ever having to deal with it, whether ourselves personally or someone near us. It doesn't free us to have to deal with it, to just say, I don't have to worry about that. Jesus sought this man out. Notice what God's word says. After the demons had said, please don't send us into the abyss, allow us to go into the pigs, it says in verse 13, he gave them permission. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. That's the same word used to describe terrified when the disciples were with Jesus and he calmed the storm. They were terrified at what they saw. A man whom they were afraid of is now in his right mind, clothed and acting normal. And it terrified them. Of course, that wasn't the only reason. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told them about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus, stay here, help us more. No. Leave. Leave. This event causes me to ask 3 questions. It creates more questions than it does answers. I'm going to be honest with you, okay? At least when I read it. The first question that I have is, why were the people afraid of Jesus and the restored man? Why were they afraid of him? I think the biggest thing is that, unfortunately, we're more comfortable with explained problems than we are unexplained solutions. Honestly, At least if I look at something and I don't like it and I can explain it, at least I can like, okay, I can live with it. This guy's just messed up, that they have a mental illness, or they're mentally anguished, or something broke them in life. They came from a bad family. They got a drug problem. They're homeless. I can put a box around it. I can call it something. But take someone whose life is radically changed in the twinkling of an eye, and we don't know what to call that. And it scares us. It scares us. I think that's part of it. Emotionally, they don't know how to process what has happened. But it also creates another problem. Another question, why did Jesus allow the demons, legion, to go into the 2,000 pigs? Think about this with me for just a moment. One, I think it was proof to the spectators something's actually happened here. I mean, it's one thing for Jesus to say, okay, demon be gone. Then someone might say, well, where'd it go? What happened? How did we even know he had a demon? Exactly right. But when it went into the pigs and then ran off the mouths, there really were demons in that guy. So that was part of it, I think. I think it's proof to the man that the unclean spirits were gone. Who knows his mental state? Who knows what he thought of himself, how he evaluated himself? But when that happened, he could clearly see there was something wrong with him, and Jesus took it out. And he could see that. So it's an object lesson also. Because what did the demons do when they got into the pigs? They destroyed the pigs. Folks, Satan is out to destroy all of creation. All of it. He doesn't care. Listen, we are no more, he's going to treat us just like he treats pigs. The difference is that we are made in the image of God. We are the crown of creation. And so God loves us immensely. He loves us and does not want us to live under the influence of darkness in our life. But here's probably the biggest question. You can tell I was raised an American, because I think only an American would ask this question. Did Jesus have the right to destroy 2,000 pigs, possibly bringing financial ruin to someone to save this man? Did he? Yeah, absolutely. Back then, he sure did. Does he still have that right today? Does Jesus have the right to ruin our capital assets to redeem someone? We're saying yes, but we won't even give away our capital assets to redeem someone. I mean, we don't even sometimes many of us will not just generously. Now, many do, obviously. Many don't. And maybe when we're looking at our own society and we're looking at some of the people around us that we don't know what to do with. We don't know how to help them. We don't know. Well, what if the answer is the ruin of our capital assets? I'll give you a really practical example. I know I'm just poking the bear, okay? I don't have any answers. I only have questions. Every one of us know there's a housing crisis in America. Every one of us know this. Yet every one of us would oppose affordable housing being built in our neighborhood. Why? Because it would devalue our home. I don't have the answer. I'm just pointing out the problem. This is what's going on. And I think this is why they asked Jesus to leave. We would love for you to stay and help Jesus, but I'm not sure we can financially handle it. I'm not sure our village, our community, our neighborhood, one guy cost us the livelihood of 2,000 pigs. I think you need to go. I think you need to leave. In fact, please, would you leave? Don't move that way here among us. It's kind of striking, isn't it? It's kind of striking. Lord, have mercy on us, right? Have mercy on us. So what did Jesus do? Exactly what they asked. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. I would too. But Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. This, if you want to mark your place in your Bible, this guy's the first missionary. He was the first missionary that was sent to non-Jewish people. This guy. We learn two lessons from this rescued man. One, the most powerful witness for Jesus begins at home. It begins at home. At home. Can you imagine what it must have been like when this guy went home? I can imagine the mom, and maybe, I don't know if I'm making all this up, but let's say he had a wife, and let's say he had kids, and they're in the house, and they look out the window, and one of the kids says, "Mom, Dad's coming. Lock the doors, hide. Get behind, shh, be quiet. Act like nobody's here." And he knocks on the door, and nobody says a peep. Maybe he'll go away. But there's no banging, there's no trying to break down the door, there's no yelling, there's no rage. He's, "Please come open the door. I'm not who I used to be. I met this guy, his name's Jesus. And he changed me. He rescued me. I'm not who I used to be." And of course he had to prove it to him. He had to live with them for a little bit. They had to see it. It didn't happen instantly. They had to see it. And this guy lived it at home among his family first. And then he moved out into the Decapolis. Decapolis is an interesting word. It means 10 cities. And he moved into those 10 cities, and he shared with other people what Jesus had done for him. And many people were astonished and amazed at his story. You and I, if we want to be a witness for the Lord, I'm telling you, it happens at home first. Happens at home first. But the second thing that we learn is that the banishment of Jesus does not rid a community of Jesus. Isn't that interesting? I have always found it amazing how Christians get all upset when their rights get offended, because we got to stand up and defend the Lord. We're the Lord's people, and we got to defend him. He needs us. Jesus was chased out of this town. He quietly left, but he was still there. Folks, don't get all worked up when you hear something in the news of something that's coming down. You can't silence Jesus. Not if he lives inside of you. Not if he lives inside of you. We just keep on loving people and representing people, representing the Lord as we help people, bringing joy to others. That's what we call it here, bringing joy to others as we follow Jesus. That's him calling to say, that's good preaching. That's good preaching, Carrie. Keep that up. That's what that is. But listen, I'm just telling you the truth. If Jesus lives inside of us, he cannot be banished. He can't be chased out. So don't get all worked up when you hear things like that happening. I mean, taking prayer out of school. Are you kidding me? Teachers are always praying. You'd pray too if 40 kids walked in and sat in your room. You're not going to take it out just because you take some plaque off the wall. He's bigger than a plaque on a wall. We can't get all worked up in that stuff. He's bigger than that. I want to lead us in prayer and then close us. Father, your word has brought up some interesting things for us to think about. Lord, I wish I could always open your word, read it, and everything be in a nice little box. And I know exactly what I need to do after hearing it. Lord, sometimes it's not like that, and this passage is one of those. Father, the whole idea of our faith being somewhere between our immaturity and our pride. Lord, the idea that redeeming people, when you do that, it could come at a great cost of our own capital assets. Or are we just going to send you away because we don't like that? Lord, it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to process. And Lord, I pray that you would show us what we need to do, how we need to respond to your word today. Lord, the whole idea of the fact that you pursue people who are mentally anguished. And we are to be like you. But Lord, how does that look? How does that work? Father, so much beyond us. Lord, I pray we would think about these things. We would pray about these things. That we would seek your face individually and as a church. Lord, to know what we should do. Lord, to represent you in our town, in our neighborhoods. Lord, I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. You know what
One of the things that Pastor Kerry mentioned in this morning's message was the range that people will often go through between having a lack of faith in Jesus versus having a hardened heart of pride. On your screen, you'll see a graph that shows the spectrum between these two. And as I lead you through a time of response, I want you to genuinely ask yourself, where do I fall on this scale? The disciples in this passage that we spoke about this morning fell on the far left side, 5, immature fear during the furious storm, despite having Jesus physically present with them in the boat. The disciples in this passage are in a state of panic and they cry out, Jesus, don't you care if we drown? This response shows their lack of faith and their immaturity in Christ. However, for a lot of people, they would be on the far other side of the spectrum, having so much pride in their life that they feel like the storms of life could come and they wouldn't even talk to Jesus. They wouldn't even sit down and take the time to pray to him or ask him for his help or his guidance. Obviously, neither end of this spectrum is where we want to be. When we witness Jesus' power and provision in our life, and we come to the realization of who Jesus truly is, from that mature faith will come, which is where we want to be, right in the middle. I want you to think of a situation in your life right now that maybe is difficult for you, something that you're struggling with. Maybe you lost your job unexpectedly and the bills are piling up. Maybe you're going through a really difficult time with your relationship with your kids or in your marriage. This storm of hardship might have you feeling overwhelmed with fear, with anxiety or doubt, and you may be questioning God's provision and care, just like the disciples did when they asked Jesus in the boat if he even cares about them. Instead of becoming consumed by the crashing waves that you may feel that you're experiencing in this trial, I just want to encourage you to fix your eyes on the one who commands even the winds and the waves to obey him. Just as Jesus was truly present in that boat with the disciples, he is intimately present with you in your personal storm. It may not feel like that in the midst of your struggle, but God has not abandoned you. I want to encourage you to take some time this morning to just pray and ask the Lord to help you mature in your faith and move either from the immature state of pride or the unbelief, and remember that our Savior is the master of every circumstance that we face. I encourage you to pause this video, take some time to think and pray through that immediate struggle, and then I'm going to close us in prayer. Lord, I just want to pray for all of my friends who are watching online today. I pray for anyone who may be going through a struggle right now, something that they're not sure how to deal with. I pray, Lord, that you will help us to move from a hardened heart of pride where we don't even ask you for your help, towards a real mature faith in you where we trust that you know our immediate struggles. Or I pray that if we're on the other side of the spectrum and just really struggling with disbelief in you, that you will just encourage us and bring our hearts closer to you. Help us to have that faith in you. Thank you that we can trust you to be with us through every storm. In your name I pray, amen. If you're in a situation that you feel like you're struggling with your faith or struggling with the balance between faith and pride, I just want to ask you to reach out to us. We're here for you. We love you. You can do this really easily by texting the word connect to our number 330-400-2869, or you can email me personally. My email is christy@gbcakron.org. We'd love to hear from you.